Good evening, everybody. I'd like to bring the regular regional council meeting of August the 12th to order. I'd like to acknowledge that the Northern Rockies Administrative Center is located in the heart of the traditional territories of our friends and neighbors, the Dene Cree and Danezau people of Fort Nelson and Prophet River First Nations. We further recognize the rights provided by our treaty, and we also celebrate the contribution and enduring presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually, is being streamed and recorded. Are there any council additions to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, are there any staff? No, thank you. Is there any public that would wish to comment on tonight's agenda? There's none in the gallery. Is there any online? Is there a hand? Ms. Vandersteen, please.
Hello, good evening again, Councillor and Mayor Fraser. Just wanted to comment on 8.1 Dan Davies correspondence on crime that you've received. And just want to mention that the Chamber has also had many discussions recently about crime and did send an email regarding the concerns from business to Mayor Fraser, CEO Barry, and the RCMP. We're certainly interested in participating and finding solutions. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, adoption of the agenda is in order, please. Moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Dickey. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. There are 3 sets of minutes. Committee of the Whole from July the 8th, Regional Council July the 8th, and Special Regional Council from July the 15th for adoption, please. Moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Souls. Are there any errors or omissions? Is Councillor Gerwing on the line? Okay, good. Seeing no errors and omissions, all in favor of adoption? Opposed? Those are carried. Thank you. Is there any business arising from those minutes or questions? Staff? Council? Okay. That brings us to reports. Admin report 7.1, Enabling Accessibility Fund, an application for the NRM's accessible parking installation along 50th Ave North and South. Welcome. Good evening.
So this report outlines a application to the Enabling Accessibility Fund program, which is in line with the objectives of the accessible parking installation along 50 Ave North and South. The new funding scenario, if our application is successful, is outlined in the report. And today we're seeking council's support in the application.
Okay, questions for Jasmine? Would this be to go this year? Would be to build this year?
Yes.
Is this one of the projects that was in our agenda, in our budget this year? Yep, it was. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mayor, that there's a bit of an increase in the budget amount, the amount in this there, because we took the scope of work and based it on the fee schedule that the feds provides. That's why there's so the value is a little bit more here versus what the budget original budget was. Not our contribution,
Right.
The overall project.
Yeah, our contribution is within our budget amount. That.
Oh yeah.
So that's what the question was. Yeah. Okay, good. What are council's wishes? Councilor Andrews?
I would like to motion that council support an application to the Enabling Accessibility Fund program for the accessible parking installation, 50th Avenue North and South, project for $90,812.06, equivalent to 75% of the total project costs.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Andrews. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Dickey? Is there any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to 7.2, the Parker Lake wildfire report. Staff, please.
Thank you. I'll pass it over to Erin and she can speak to it.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks very much. The admin report 39 is just presented to you at this time. It was prepared by Tony Pike, who is our EEOC finance section head. It's just a quick summary of some of the activities and the associated costs that have been incurred so far with regards to the Parker Lake wildfire EOC and our emergency response. So it's broken up into a number of different areas. The first one is costs associated with the Emergency Operations Center. I'm not going to go through this in any great detail, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of sections that I think are really important. The first one is under the Emergency Operations Center, and it's some of the operational costs, particularly those related to staffing. So I kind of wanted to explain what is incremental and recoverable when it comes to staffing. So as a local government, we are not eligible to claim for the regular wages and benefits of our staff who operate within our Emergency Operations Center. We are allowed to claim for those wages and benefits of costs over and above regular. So anything that was incurred in terms of any of the overtime or travel or any of those costs, we're allowed to claim those. So those are what usually constitute an incremental cost. One of the other costs that we're allowed to claim and is incremental is the replacement of staff. So for instance, we had Harvey Woodland, who's currently working inside of our EOC still. We're allowed to claim for his replacement in the recreation department. So that does help offset some of those costs. Also within the EOC, we had the relocation of our EOC to Pink Mountain. One of the things that I just kind of wanted to highlight in that section was the relocation of our servers. So during the evacuation, we relocated our servers to Fort St. John. At this time, we're looking at keeping them off site. We don't know if they're in their final location, but we are intending to not bring them inside the building again, inside Town Hall. That building is not the safest from a fire perspective, so we're looking at a more secure location for our servers on a more permanent basis. Under our EOC contractors, again, I always like to take the opportunity to thank those local governments who sent us some staff. So Soto First Nations, the community of Chetwynd, and the community of Cochrane. I mean, we just can't thank them enough for loaning us some of their staff. So those are some of the costs that we're actually eligible to claim as well, the reimbursement for those local governments for sending us their staff. Just going through the list here. You can walk through it yourself, but some of the things that are a little bit different for us as a local government, given our evacuation, were things like water and septic services. So for those residents who took a recreational vehicle with them, we were still quite early in the season. So some of the campgrounds in Taylor, Fort St. John, that took some of our residents, they actually didn't have their water and sewer set up yet because they weren't turned on. So we did, we were eligible to claim some water and septic services for those evacuees. In terms of the Northern Rockies Fire Rescue, that initial incident response and continued fire suppression and structure protection actually goes through a claim system with the BC Wildfire Service. So our staffing, our equipment and supplies, and some other of our apparatus and incidentals, we get to claim through BC Wildfire. So that claim process is in the works. I'm going to let Scott chat about the Cameron building.
Can we do that now?
Sure.
Just a couple of things. If I top of the Cameron building, so you'll notice there's an absence of dollar values attached to this document right now, and that's because we're still reconciling some of the numbers. So we do have some draft information that we'll present to council in camera. So it's not finalized yet. When we reconcile, it will be publicly released, of course. In addition to, we're still in some negotiations or discussions with the province with some reimbursement of certain items and whatnot. So between that and some other items, so we're not completely finalized in that. But again, felt that this document was really good to give an update to council, and then we'll can get into some of the other detail and provide that to the public once we have that finalized at a later date. In terms of the Cameron building, it was, previously communicated to council that, because that's where we've been housing the fire department since May 11th. The intent there at this point is to maintain that facility, the fire department at the facility until the fire season is behind us. Just because of the type of facility it is, being a non-combustible facility. the location, and the ability to house some additional, resources if required. And additionally, just, the existing hall is not in the best of position for that from a fire resistance perspective and a staff space perspective. We will be bringing some options to council at a later date in terms of moving forward with some potential options from a short-term perspective with the Cameron building because as was discussed prior to the evacuation, we're in the process of developing a business case to determine what we do with the existing hall in terms of the code requirements that need to occur. Do we do that there, or do we look at some other options? It's going to come down to dollars and cents essentially to see what's the best value for the organization and the department in terms of how we proceed. So that's still in the works, but in the meantime, we're intending to keep the fire department in that location until the fire season is behind us, and we will have further discussion with council regarding that at a later date.
Okay. Good.
That's it for me.
Back to you, Aaron.
Thanks. I'll just continue really quickly. So one of the areas that we learned a little bit about during this particular evacuation was animal evacuation and rescue. So we did have some livestock consultants come into our EOC to help some of our agriculture and livestock operators. So that was really good. Just reading through the report here, we tried to claim for some of our costs at the airport, particularly when we had to keep our lights on at the airport when NAV Canada evacuated the tower. We had to keep those runway lights on for 17 consecutive days, which of course shortened the lifespan of those lights. Tony tried her hardest to get those expenses claimed, but we were unsuccessful in getting those the cost for those lights to be approved. We also have a bit of an issue up at Miniker right now with some fire break mitigation. So we have no firm costs on that right now. We're still working through with some contractors, but we will be submitting any quotes that we get into EMCR to see if we can try to get those costs back as well. And finally, we will have and do have some revenues that we will be associating with this response, particularly bulk water usage by BC Wildfire. And under BC Wildfire policy, that any fire department who responds with their fire rescue apparatus and vehicles used in a fire suppression or structural protection, we are eligible for revenues for the use of our own apparatus and vehicle and the 16 staff who provided that service. So we are working through that revenue claim as well. And I think that's it if there are any questions.
Council, questions? Councilor Gerwing, I see your hand up, please.
Yeah, thank you. Is there an appeal process for the claims that have been denied?
I don't know if there's an official appeals process. I know we do have a chance to submit additional information. So once we've received an initial denial, we are able to submit any pertinent information that we feel might help change their mind. But I don't know if there's an official appeals process. Tony, have you heard of any?
Go ahead, Tony. Oh,
I apologize. I was having a hard time finding my unmute button. No, there isn't a formal appeals process. Although, as Aaron said, we do take a second and third stab at our submission and continue to bring public safety, life safety issues back into it. There are some very clear no's where the province is concerned. But there are also a lot of cases where we've been able to provide the business case for costs with the second and third application.
Thanks.
okay. So I had a question sort of along those same lines, and it's, I'm not going to talk about specifics, but you know, when we start talking about the dollar values, there's a portion in there where we were doing cleanouts for RVs along the highway and I don't know for sure, but I think I kind of deduced it. Maybe it said there, I'm just trying to recall. Part of those were not being paid for by the province because the people didn't register. Is that correct? Is that why
Correct.
some of the RVs that were cleaned out, there's a dollar portion there that the province didn't cover. Is that why? Because they didn't. And the reason I'm bringing it up now is I want it on the record so that the importance of people registering, even though they have self-accommodations. So.
So one of the, essentially partially, yes, it's not only because they didn't register, but because they were not, in a campground or a park that would permit camping. So, the province doesn't want to sort of support that, I guess, people camping on Crown land with the, fear that they're going to, dump gray water and black water. So they're trying to encourage everyone to go into RV campgrounds and camp on land that is for that purpose. So we were denied the claim cost for all of the water and sewer trucks that went up and down the highway and service those that were in non-sanctioned campgrounds. So those individuals could have even been registered, but we still wouldn't have been able to claim those costs. The only costs that we were allowed to claim for people who were in self-accommodation in campgrounds are those that went to a campground that should have had service and didn't have service. So for instance, if they went into, I think Peace Island Park was having some water issues. So we were able to claim to provide water to those who were camping in Peace Island Park because they should have had service and didn't have service. That's the only ones that we were able to claim for.
Okay, so I understand that, but it seems totally counterintuitive to a potential evacuation by us where people are using RVs and they don't want them dumped. We're actually giving them water and picking up their gray and their black water. They're not dumping it,
That was
right?
our argument.
And that was our argument
Yeah.
already?
Oh, yeah.
Because if we evacuate to the north, that's exactly what's going to happen.
That was our argument. And
That was our argument.
That was-
And under the new ESS rules, you no longer, of course, have to show up at a reception center, and
Right.
every individual is going to be eligible for a cash reimbursement per night to take care of themselves. So up to $200 per night for residents to camp in any of the number of the, our natural areas up north that we're going to be expecting people to camp in. So the province has said that if they do that, the province will not cover sewer and water services.
So they're gonna get dumping.
They're
They're gonna get illegal dumping. It
That's
just
some of the
doesn't make any
discussions that
sense.
we're in the process of having, because that's frankly has been
That's our argument.
response, our
Yeah,
argument.
Can we add
is-
that?
is,
Can we add that? Have we got a meeting with Minister Ma?
We're not confirmed yet, but we put a request in.
Yeah,
for EMC
so
members.
can we add that to the potential topics that we talked to her about?
Yeah, we can request to be added, yeah.
Yeah.
'cause-
I mean, because it's a special circumstance. I mean, yeah,
Well, it comes.
because
it
they
comes-
will dump illegally if we don't
They
provide
will.
a service to them.
Well, it's situational too. It just comes down to the uniqueness of the type of evacuation that we have to do based on our geographic location. right?
Yeah.
It's much different than most areas in the province.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can see them filling up and saying it's an evacuation. I don't have anything else to do. I'm full. They dump it. And say, we'll worry about the repercussions of that after, when it's something you can absolutely plan for. It's part of your
Yeah,
evacuation.
and the province's response to that basically is they should drive down the highway to the area so that they can actually be in an area that's supported by
Yeah.
by the province. But that's, I mean, it's definitely counterintuitive. It's when we recommend to take if you have an RV to take it, so
Yeah.
that you can
Yeah.
reduce the demand on the accommodations in the receiving communities, and of course, if every RV did show up there all at once, it would have been a bit of a log jam too. So
Yeah, well,
Anyway,
let's,
that's something that we're working
let's
on.
take that one further. I think, if we to get political with that, let's do it, because I think it's important. Okay, any other questions for staff? I think there wasn't anything you wanted us to do with that other than receive it, I think, so.
Correct.
So thank you very much for the report. It was a good report. The one we have in camera has already been talked about. You know, there are some dollar figures there, but we're still in negotiations, so we need to talk about that in camera. So that's also a good report. So thank you. Okay, that takes us now to 7.3, which is the bylaw for the water enforcement, notice enforcement amendment, water use restrictions bylaw. Thank you. Staff to speak to that, please. Welcome again.
Hello again. So following the recent adoption of the amendment for the water use restrictions bylaw, a draft amendment for the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw has been prepared, just addressing the additional stage that was added to the water conservation stages. So that's been prepared for council's review and consideration.
Are there any questions or comments? I have one. I think we missed something though, when I asked the question of staff earlier, they sort of let me know why. I really think we should be including in this the inappropriate use of water for structural protection sprinklers. The inappropriate use of them, right, which uses thousands of gallons of water, potentially at the detriment to the neighbors. And so it jumped in my mind when I seen that we were looking at fines for that, but it means a review of the bylaw itself. Like, we couldn't just add it in here, but I would like to put that on the floor that we consider that for the inappropriate use of water when it comes to structural protection sprinklers. So maybe you could explain sort of where we're at with that. Water bylaw.
Yeah, for sure. I can put it to some context for you too, so for the rest of council. So we actually are in the process of developing a new water restriction or water conservation bylaw. So that was something that was being drafted, I'll say, last into the winter, which wasn't completed at in time for the watering season. So we elected for this season not to introduce that because there's some it's a bit of a departure from our previous conservation bylaw. So we want to make sure there's appropriate communication education to the public, which we didn't think was appropriate to do during the watering season. We just create too much confusion. To me, the time to do it's over the winter months into the spring and prepare the public for it. So they're aware of some of the changes. So what we did this year, as was the previous report specific to the water restriction bylaws, we just added that one stage in, because it was too much of a jump from from where we currently are to the next stage. We went from basically saying you can water twice a day, every second day, to no watering except for hand watering. So that's why we added the stage. The intent is to bring that bylaw forward to council, the new bylaw this winter. And definitely something we did chat about after we went through the evacuation piece and saw some of those challenges we had in the rural areas, especially with the sprinklers running and putting such a demand on our system, that we would add something like that to our and educate the public again as part of that piece in terms of the need to conserve water during that particular time too, just because of the need for it. Right? So
yeah, you're conserving water, but you're conserving it for a different reason,
right?
Which is the safety of your neighbors and the community. So, and it makes sense that, you know, because I'm not against them, I'm against the inappropriate use of them. And so that becomes an education bit. So we change the bylaw, we do some education in the community, and then we have an enforcement piece that goes with it the same as everything else.
Absolutely. Because one of the things with these sprinklers is actually provide some education on how to put them on, to set them up if you're doing them yourself, because you can actually do some significant damage to your home if it's not done properly, because water typically falls down, not up or in. Things like protecting chimneys and vents and whatnot in your roof. But there's absolutely support, because it creates additional resources that structural protection units might not need to use. But part of that communication is also is there's a time to have them on, not to have them on, right? And we saw a lot of people who left the community have them on their property already, or have them on there, and they turned them on and left, and they just sprinkled, right? And put a significant demand on the system. So there's that education and the conservation piece, which we'll definitely consider or put into that as part of the new bylaw.
Yeah, and educate them with respect to our fire department's role. I mean, they will turn them on.
Absolutely.
Right? Cause they know who's got them and they'll turn them on and so people can feel comfortable that the investment they've made in their own structural protection is gonna be worth it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I got us away from what we were here to the three readings, so are there any other questions? We'll deal with that, I guess, when the new bylaw comes forward. Councilor Gerwing.
Yeah, I'm going back to this bylaw. So we used the number of waterings, like right now you can only water till 11 a.m., I believe. And then the evening watering has been removed, and that's the stage that we're at now, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
And when we originally brought this in, I asked the question about what enforcement measures we were going to take place. And I got an answer that is not currently effective. There are several properties that are consistently watering on the correct day, excuse me, but they're watering in the evening. So again, like I mentioned at every bylaw, without some sort of enforcement, like what's the point?
I can speak to that, sure. So we've been having significant discussions about that internally. We don't have a dedicated bylaw enforcement officer. But we talked about different mechanisms we can utilize and how do we deal with some of these problem property owners, some of which is that you don't have to actually deal with the property owner the day of. If it's witnessed by staff, we can literally document it. We can go back later. In addition to utilizing our contract, I'll call it bylaw person we use for animal control, but to help and assist with that piece. So we're working through different mechanisms and have been dealing with these properties. It's just working out how do we adjust with that capacity we had before. We were solely dependent on the fire department essentially to do it, and it's not realistic today. So we're working on different options. One of them will be, increasing some of the responsibilities our animal control contractor has, because she's already out around driving around looking for stray animals. She can assist us with the enforcement and education of the bylaw. So it definitely I'm not suggesting it's not an issue, but we are actively looking at
ways for enforcement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it absolutely is an issue.
Okay. Yeah, and once somebody on the street sees that somebody else is doing it, then everybody starts doing it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. 3 readings. Who would like to move 3 readings, please? Moved by Councillor Souls. 3 readings of the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment number 227, 2024. Be given first, second, and third readings. Councillor Souls. Do I have a second, or Councillor Andrews? Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, did I have a 7.4? Yes. Oh, no. It was 8 point. Yeah, I had this addition, but I can't remember if it was.
The addition with the
Oh, it's all on the floor. 8.2 is the addition, the caribou discussion, right? Okay, so 8.1 is a letter from our MLA Davies with respect to crime and safety in the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality. Can I have a mover for discussion, please? Moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Souls. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That is open for discussion. Who would like to start the discussion? Well, maybe staff will put it on for discussion. Was there something that staff wanted to say specifically about this, or?
Well, it came to council, so it would be added as correspondence for council's review and discussion. I need to apologize to Bev actually, because we actually met and chatted about some things last week, and I just recognized when she talked about the email that she sent. It did go to you and I, Mayor, and to RCMP, but not to the rest of council or admin. So I just forwarded that to admin so we can pass that around. Think care specifically what MLA Davis's concern with obviously is the concerns in the community around various crimes that are occurring in the community. The 24-hour policing, which is or lack of 24-hour policing, I guess. Or I guess the word that appropriately is that we do have 24-hour policing, but there's a section of time in the night when actually they're not patrolling community. They're still available. All right, so there is still policing availability. And of course, just the challenges from a staffing complement and a capacity complement. So what MLA Davies is pointing out is just the amount of crime and issues that they're seeing in the community from policing perspective, which is conversations that we have been having more on the staffing component with the RCMP, and just some of the challenges we're seeing in the north generally was specific to our community, and the fact that in our community we don't we're not in a geographic position, again, our uniqueness to have mutual aid agreements with other communities, or the ability to, we all know that a RCMP member or anyone from emergency service for that matter has to attend the community from a different location. It's a significant wait time. It's not like going from Taylor or Dawson Creek to Fort St. John, for example. So it just magnifies the issue when the staffing when there's a staffing issue. So something that we're actively having conversations with the RCMP, and obviously you're aware of that, Mayor and Council.
Councilor Andrews?
I think I may have accidentally done some campaigning on MLA Davies' behalf. I had this letter sitting on the counter at work, and anybody who took the chance to read it agreed almost 100% with what he had to say. This really echoes what the community's feeling, I think, as a whole, and I'm really interested in what Honorable Farnsworth will say, and hoping we can get some traction and support again behind MLA Davies here.
I just like to add one thing just from a staff perspective, and I echoed this, I think, during the evacuation piece too. This doesn't, you see the same thing with the nurses up at the hospital. It's not about the officers or the members that are in community working and policing. That's not the concern or the issue, for lack of better words. It's around, I think it comes down to capacity and having enough capacity to be able to perform the tasks given the need of the community. So I want to throw that out because I don't want to wrong messaging to go out to the public that we think it's an issue with the members in the community, because from a staff perspective, it's, and I think from council's perspective, not to speak on their behalf, it's absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, and that I've been getting feedback from the community too. They're really impressed with the members locally. It seems to be higher up the chain where there seems to be issues.
Yeah, so I want to thank MLA Davies for sending this letter on well, his behalf and our behalf, I suppose. Dealing with the RCMP and reporting out publicly is a sensitive sort of thing, right? Because it's normally, I'll say normally, there are some things that the RCMP tell senior staff and tell myself about the activities that they're doing that we can't really talk to the public about, except to say that, in a real general sense, this is happening, or, we have officers here. But I'm growing more and more frustrated as people are with respect to the communication. And, we've been without a senior NCO in this community since January. And that's not something that is generally known. However, it's getting to the point where communication is starting to, is failing as far as I'm concerned. I mean, when you have a local relationship with a senior NCO in your local detachment, you're getting updates often, with respect to, what's happening. Since we've had a major evacuation where we've had some problems with RCMP at the planning level. And again, I absolutely agree that at the member level on the street, they're doing the best job they can do under the circumstances that they're under. But when it comes to communication and interacting, you need senior NCOs in your community who understand your community and understand what's happening in your community and understand what the expectations of the local community are. When you have a rotating staff of senior NCOs coming and going in the community, you don't get that same response from them, because they're just not in touch with the local residents as a senior NCO who's here all the time. So have there been senior NCOs here working? Yes, there have been. They're on a rotational basis. But we're just not hearing about the things that are going on. We've had 4 arson cases, maybe 5. Don't know, because I don't know how they're considering the 5th one, the house that burned up. Missing persons, multiple issues around theft and break and enter around the community, particularly in the late hours of the evening where everybody knows there's coverage, they're available, but they're not on the street patrolling. And that everybody knows that. It's not a secret that I'm explaining at this moment in time or putting out there. Everybody understands that. And so these are all things that a senior NCO can take back to their management and ask for resourcing and ask for plans. But right now it's crickets. And it's just extremely disheartening that the community is being left the way it is. Now, I also know that they're anecdotally, because you kind of can figure out new people in town and what they're doing. It's pretty easy to figure out that there's plainclothes people in town that are probably working for the RCMP. You know, people told me on the weekend that, hey, there's some vehicles in town with new RCMP plainclothesmen in town. So it's out there and it's happening, but we don't know what's going on. Nobody's given us a plan. Nobody's given us an understanding of what's happening, and nobody's letting us know what's happening with our senior NCOs, local senior NCOs. So it's very frustrating, and it's time, I guess, for me to follow up on MLA Davies' letter because it's his job to deal at the provincial level, because that's his role. I think it's probably our job and perhaps my role as the spokesperson for the council to work inside the levels of the RCMP to try to get at least some understanding of what's going on. Our staff will deal directly with the staff at the direct level, but to ratchet it up through E-Division is probably my job. And there were some things that I don't want to talk about that I was sort of waiting for, didn't happen. And so now is probably the time to ratchet up some calls within the RCMP organization to see if we can get a little bit more action. So I don't know if we have a full complement. We used to know exactly how many officers we had here. I don't know anymore. And it's been 6 months like that. It's actually more, 7 since January. So it's 7 starting into 8 months where there's just been a void at the top of our detachment. So that's sort of what's happening. The community is getting more and more frustrated. I know that you all are getting more and more frustrated. And I'm certainly getting more frustrated. So it's time to maybe ratchet up the communication from our side. And that's what I intend to do over the next couple of weeks. So. Any other comments with respect to MLA's Davies' letter? Okay, then we will move on. 8.2 is the grant in aid application review for our information. Oh, I'm sorry, did I skip over? Yeah, sorry. I didn't make a note to myself. New 8.2, Boreal Caribou. Can we move this for discussion, please? Moved by Councillor Soul, second by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Right, we finally got a letter with respect to the proposals for regulation for Boreal Caribou in our region. We were made aware by some of the trappers, myself included, who had received letters about a month ago, and our staff started sort of making some some inquiries, I guess, on our behalf of what's going on, because a couple of things were going on. A, we didn't know this was happening at the staff level. B, the initial letters that came out to the trappers anyways had included the Northern Rockies as not as signatories, but as supporting the plan. And so that wasn't the case. And so staff have put together this report, and I will turn it over to them for discussion.
I'll ask,
Start the discussion anyway.
there's no report. We know there's no report.
Yeah, there's no, it's basically just
Correspondence.
it's
It's
It's the receipt of this, and, you know, let's put it into context. I guess that's what I'm asking you to do.
Yeah, we've.
There's no report though.
And Lisa can kind of speak to some of the activities. So Lisa did, and we did reach out to the province and indicate our concerns around the way the language was worded in the original correspondence that was shared with us from the trappers. It was included, as you said, Mayor, regarding it could definitely been perceived that that as an organization, council endorsed the document, which of course wasn't the case. So we reminded the province of that there was no endorsement of council and requested that the wording be adjusted accordingly, so it couldn't be construed that way. We also reached out, asked some questions around the what considerations the province would have in terms of feedback that would be provided either from residents, trappers, NRM. You know, NRM was quite clear previously in terms of some concerns with the plan. Social economic study was a concern that was raised by council, and as such, we had intended to have a report on the agenda tonight. We're still waiting for the final report from Stantec, so hopefully that's in the next agenda. Last I chatted, and Lisa confirmed we didn't receive any response back. So I think we sent the email to the province on Friday. And just trying to get some clarification in regards to, frankly, what kind of considerations, if any, would the province have regarding feedback with this document based on the conversations we've had. Then additionally, this is Lisa's more expertise than myself. She has had some recent discussions with the forestry staff regarding the annual allable cut and the potential. You know, is it because of the amount of burn in the landscape or fire in the landscape over the past 2 summers? Is there a consideration in the province they might reevaluate the cut and what's available, and the fact that there's the current plan that's the province has boreal plan, the Medicine plan is one could argue that it's dated information because it was information that was at the time we would say is accurate, but that's 2+ years ago now or more. So that's something council may want to consider also, is something regarding is that particular acknowledgement or concern that this plan is based on some dated information, and then is there an opportunity or potential the province is going to look at it? Because at this point, at least I think there's no plan when you reached out regarding the allowable cut for the chief forester there's mechanisms that they could utilize, and they can at any given time review that, right? But-
Yeah, so the inventory, the VRI for the province, I think was last updated in 2007. So the plan itself was based on outdated inventory information to begin with. And now you've got 2 years of burn within prime caribou habitat. So adding additional constraints to the land base through this type of, initiative, I guess, based on information or unknown information of what is the actual real impact to an AAC in an area or timber volume in an AAC or in a TSA, is in line with the recent UBCM resolution that was included in your SIP package, around throughout the province making decisions to impose constraints on the land base without having proper information to base it on.
Yeah, so with respect to this, I mean, essentially, there's a plan that's been approved by the province and the First Nation. What this is they say they're consulting with respect to the regulation that fits in that plan, right? Which will allow some things to happen and some things not to happen, mostly not to happen. In the 2 biggest industries that are facing us for the most part, is the petroleum industry and the forest industry. And so the letter I got was, explained that fairly well. And it's asking if there's any specific thing from a trapper's perspective, and, access and that sort of thing is because it will not allow new roads, no new anything in some of these polygons that they've got there. And then there's a special clause in there, I guess, that talks about, you know, if you can come to agreement, there might be an exclusion from the regulation. But from our perspective, you know, this has the potential to put a fairly significant damper on any future activities, just outright. Right? So, and it's based on the original outdated information and information that, you know, doesn't include the fact that more than 50% of the land base has been burned out there in the last 2 years. And with that in mind, what does the removal of that caribou habitat do to the potential recovery plan that they've put into place? You know, are we putting these restrictions on the land where it might not help anyways? Because, you know, does anybody know what, you know, how long it will take for, or how much caribou habitat has been lost to the fire based on food requirements, that, you know, how long will that take to recover? And whether or not the plans they have in place now will work with this burned. I don't see anything from anybody. And so I think at least we should be responding to them with respect to that. You know, I argued against us spending the money on the Stantec study, and now I'm glad that you didn't take my advice on that, because perhaps there's some information there from Stantec that will help us to understand the impact of this. We'll see what Stantec comes back with, but, you know, maybe, you know, because I have until August the 20th, but the community has until September 11th. So we have another meeting before then. So hopefully that Stantec report will give us something to get towards them. And then finally, the idea that they really haven't consulted much in the past. You know, the point that I think staff is trying to make with them is, even if we put this in, is it really going to change anything that you've decided on? Because it's, you know, what are you prepared to do with any information that we provide? So those three things, I think we should be asking questions or responding with some kind of comment, at least in those three areas, up for this. That's my thoughts. Did I see your hand up, Councillor Dickey? Councillor Growing, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, for making that public comment around the report. I really appreciate that. At the end of the letter, it does say, as part of this process, we plan to address comments, questions, and concerns, and to contact so-and-so to arrange a meeting. So at the very least, I think that we need to arrange a meeting, and we really need to light a fire under whatever is holding up that Stantec report. Like, I don't know how many years it is now, because, like, you know, I just can't remember that far back, but we've been waiting for this for a long time. And this was supposed to give us information as to whether we wanted to go along with this with the METSI plan or not, right? So it dates back right to the beginning of this whole process, and now life has changed for all of us. So I really would like us to get that report as soon as possible, and with enough time that we can digest the information that is in that report and share it within the community, to let the community know what this plan, what the ramifications of this plan could mean for the entire NRM. I have been contacted by many people very, very concerned about it, and yet the letter that we were given said that, like, what they heard is that there was a lot of support for the plan. So, you know, there's still a lot of research that we all need to do as individual council people to actually decide for ourselves how we could even vote, whether we wanted to go along with the plan or not. And time is running out, right? Because by September 11th, well, by the time we get the report, and how do we share it with the community and explain it all, like, it's huge. So yeah, I'll leave it there, but thanks.
Yeah, My understanding is the plan and it's a done deal. This is the regulation that talks about how they're gonna enact restrictions, for lack of a better word, within that plan. And, but everything that you said applies, I think, to the regulation as much as it does to the overall plan. With respect to the report, I think staff have seen a draft and made some comments, and so I think they're expecting the Stantec report back to us before the meeting in September. Is that correct, staff?
Yeah, so I had actually asked for, well, my indication was that I wanted to bring it to this
Right.
council meeting, so Stantec was aware of that. They provided a summary of the report, but we decided to wait until we actually had the full report to bring it to council, so we
Okay.
I'll ensure that we have it by September 3rd for our next meeting.
Yeah, I if you can, because it's such a tight time frame. If as
Mhm.
soon as you get it, I think if you can get it out to us, you know, in advance of even
We can circulate it ahead of time.
yeah, even before the agenda, if you have it
Yeah,
before
we
the
can,
agenda.
we can circulate it even with the report that would go on the agenda, because Lisa drafted a report based on what we knew, based on the information you provided, but it's.
Good. Oh, Councillor Gurley?
Yeah, sorry, just as a brief follow-up, I know the plan is the plan and it's gonna be accepted, but that doesn't mean that we can't continue our efforts if we decide as a council that this isn't a plan that we can support. It doesn't mean that we have to stop, you know, just because the province has decided that this is the plan. So, yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that. Anybody else?
I just noticed that the layers of plans like this, they all come with a different name. And we sat, Mayor, you and I sat in on the land use group meeting, the provincial land use meeting, and one of the framework documents that supports the decision making on land use in this area is the 30 by 30
Right.
initiative that Canada and BC has signed on to. And I questioned that as a local who said, show us where you've talked to us about which 30, where, and the maps that 30 by 30 propose as potential restricted areas also coincide very well on about half of it with the caribou survival strategy maps. So you talk about the layers, you don't know that it's actually caribou that is driving this restriction.
Yeah.
I have one comment, is
Okay.
that report was done so long ago. I think Curtis was part of that survey, and the year that they did that survey, the next year was the fire. And he had highly recommended that they redo the survey within a certain amount of time to see how the caribou and the babies and, you know, did the numbers grow or decrease and what happened to the habitat. But the recommendation in the report was restoration and rehabilitation. So if the recommendation from that report never led to rehabilitation and restoration, how can you create a policy on it? They haven't even carried out the steps from the first report. So I think there's some follow-up surveying and reestablishing those numbers and the data, because the data is old and you cannot base policy on old data.
Yeah. And even from this year's old, right? With even the last 2 years with the amount of fire that's, and particularly in the in the calendar field, particularly in the high interest areas, I guess to put it that way, there's been such a change in the last 2 years. Okay, well, we'll be looking forward to working on that in the next meeting. So thank you, staff, for that. 8.2B, I guess, is the grant and aid application review for information. There's also 5 council information packages to receive for information. Moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Souls. All in favor of receiving information? Thank you very much. That passes. New business items, are there any? Seeing none. Where does that take me to? I'm kind of lost in my agenda. Okay, standing items for discussion. Are there any councillor reports? I guess I'll, the only thing I have to report on since the last meeting is the fact that I was part of MLA Davies, health. What did he call them? Health. Thank you, rallies. We did one here in town. There was about 20 people there. I think it was pretty well attended, good interaction and discussion. The next day I traveled to Fort St. John and essentially did the same speech there to about 100 people. I think both groups were, well, the one in Fort St. John was considerably more boisterous and loud, that's for sure. Quite a bit more traffic going back and forth, honking their horns and showing support. A few more speakers, Mayor Hudson Hope, Mayor Fort St. John, myself, and of course MLA Davies. People are getting more and more frustrated with the health, recognizing that we're not decision makers in it, that we're only advocates and do the best we can to try to advocate for our communities. But there is a growing groundswell. We'll see. The media was there. We'll see if it amounts to anything. But I understand there's rallies like this happening all over the province with different MLAs taking the issues of healthcare to the people. So I think it was good. I think it helped raise awareness a little bit. There was staff there from Northern Health. I recognized them in the audience. There was staff there from the hospitals. I recognized them because they were in their work clothes. And of course, there were members of the public. There was one or two that were sort of opposed to the whole thing, and I don't know why, but they were loud enough to sort of speak up against the current system, and they think the whole province should be one big health region, which, it's an idea, I guess, but it's hard enough with Northern Health being as large as it is that it would be very difficult to maintain from one organization for sure. Okay, and that's really the only official thing that I went to in the last few weeks. Okay. No business outstanding. Is there any notice of motions? Seeing none. The public, is there any public that wish to comment? Question? Seeing none, I need a resolution to move to a closed meeting, please. And this is, again, just a reminder, there's a couple things on there, personnel related, as well as the numbers around the fire that we're still in negotiations with. So eventually those numbers will come out. But right now we're still talking about them behind closed doors because we're in negotiations. So those are the reasons that we're going in camera. Moved by Councillor Solz, second by Councillor Dickey. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We'll take a brief recess and then we'll start. Okay, thank you, everybody. We've finished our in-camera session. We do have one motion to rise with the report. And I'll ask the corporate manager to do that, please.
It was moved that the following portion of in-camera resolution 3024 be risen and reported that Esther Onchiri's application to the Northern Rockies Recruitment, Retention, Education, and Training Incentive Program be approved in principle, subject to confirmation of eligibility with the health employer. Carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. Adjournment of the regular meeting is in order. Moved by Councillor Andrews, second by Councillor Dickey. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.